we need to embrace imperfection. Now, Reid Hoffman famously once said, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, then you've launched too late. Now, when LinkedIn first launched, it was far from perfect. It had limited features. It was really unattractive as well. But Hoffman prioritized getting it out into the world so he could start to collect feedback and then he could iterate. So what does embracing imperfection look like? Let me share some things, okay? The goal of our work should always be B-, not A+. Okay, think about your old school grades as well. We're not shooting for an A+, we're shooting for B-. We're focusing on finishing, not perfecting. Completion is what creates momentum, while perfection stalls progress. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, folks. Hey, welcome to another episode of the Marketing Your Practice podcast, the podcast where I have the pleasure of simplifying the marketing and the mindset so you, the chiropractor, can increase your income, your impact, and your enjoyment in practice too. In today's episode, I want to share with you a realization that I've had after years of working with chiropractors. Now, when I look at the chiropractors, the clients that I work with, whose practices are growing versus those who aren't, I've noticed, first of all, it's very rarely about talent, about resources, or even the brilliance of the ideas of the chiropractors. The difference comes down very often to one thing, and that is their ability to be able to finish what they start. Now, I want you to think about it for a moment. Think of it a bit like building a bridge. On the other side of the canyon is everything that you've been working towards. More patience, more impact, more freedom in your life and in your practice as well. But to get there, you need a bridge. And here's the thing. It's not the most beautiful, perfectly designed bridge that gets you across. It's the completed bridge. The one with the planks that may not perfectly fit, the nails might stick out a little bit, and perhaps there's a coat of paint that could have been done better. However, it's finished, and that's what really matters. Now, I want you to pause for a moment and reflect. Over the past 3 years, how many projects have you started but not finished? How many ideas, courses, or systems are you sitting on that are half completed on your to-do list? Now, here's the real question as well. What might exist for you right now if you had them finished? How would your practice look different? What would your stress levels be like? Would you be closer to the growth and the freedom that you want? Now, my guess is probably yes. The truth is, unfinished projects don't build the bridge to your goals. They keep you stuck on the edge, staring more at what could be rather than actually walking towards it. And that's why today we're going to go and focus on progress over perfection. We're going to learn how to build that bridge plank by plank, step by step, so that you can finally get to the other side. Now, to do this, we're going to dive into 4 really simple but transformational strategies. These aren't about being perfect. They're about finishing what matters most. So let's get started. The first is we need to embrace imperfection. Now, Reid Hoffman famously once said, if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, then you've launched too late. Now, when LinkedIn first launched, it was far from perfect. It had limited features. It was really unattractive as well. But Hoffman prioritized getting it out into the world so he could start to collect feedback and then he could iterate. Now, over time, LinkedIn improved based upon what the users actually wanted, not what the founders actually thought that it needed. The philosophy of launching and learning allowed LinkedIn to grow into the giant that it is today. Now, Reid's story, one of the things that it teaches us is that waiting for perfection can delay progress, while embracing imperfection gets us closer to the goals. It gets us to where we want to be faster. So what does embracing imperfection look like? Let me share some things, okay? The goal of our work should always be B-, not A+. Okay, think about your old school grades as well. We're not shooting for an A+, we're shooting for B-. We're focusing on finishing, not perfecting. Completion is what creates momentum, okay, while perfection stalls progress. So an example of this might be sending an email even though it's not perfectly written. Maybe there's some grammar and spelling issues. Now, all the time, if you read my emails, you'll notice that I often make spelling mistakes. I don't do this on purpose. It's just not a strength of mine too, and it's not what's important. And if you're being hung up on the way that I spell things, then you're missing out on hopefully what is a little bit of wisdom inside of there, okay? In this episode already, I've stumbled several times over my words. And if that's what holds you back, then again, you're missing some of the rest. Most people don't care at all and they'll look past it. Now, there are always going to be some naysayers in amongst that, and our work isn't for them. So the goal is B-. Now, some things to think about this as well. Number 2 point here is to know that it's an evolving process, okay? So what might feel like your B- work right now will improve over time as your skills develop. So, next year, your B- work is the A+ of today as well. So the first video that you might create, you're probably going to look a bit like an amateur, but by the time that you get to your 50th, you're going to look a lot better as well. Under this concept of embracing imperfection, it's important that we clarify what is the priority. What is it that matters most here? What is the substance of your message as well, rather than the technical details? Focus your energy on what truly matters, okay? So in a presentation, prioritize the key points in the delivery, okay? Not whether your slides are perfectly designed. Now, part of being able to settle for this B- work here is recognizing that most people just don't care or they don't notice. People are generally more interested in how your work makes them feel and what it does for them than the flaws along the way. So I'm often asked, questions from chiropractors when they're making their videos. Do I need to kind of change my outfit each and every time? Because I'm saying, hey, listen, you should be block doing your videos rather than doing them one at a time. Sit down, record 5 or 6 of them. And they'll say to me, do I need a new outfit every time? And I'm like, people don't care at all. There's been numerous little research studies done where someone is going to buy a ticket at a cinema. They're going to see a movie. And what they do halfway through the purchase of that is the person behind the counter pretends to drop something. And so they bend down and then they come up as a separate person. So one person actually starts the transaction and it's a second person that finishes it. Now, when they ask these people afterwards, did you notice that? Most people don't. And even when they go from a man to a woman, they don't notice it as well, okay? Your audience doesn't remember these things. And again, if you're wearing the same thing every time, it's about branding. Most of the time I've got one of these hats on and a black t-shirt. So remember this too. We need to embrace perfection, okay? The world really doesn't care. We need to ditch the all or nothing mentality. Remember, progress happens in increments. You don't need to finish the entire project today. You just need to make meaningful strides. So perhaps it's, committing to writing one paragraph of your blog rather than having to get it all finished as well, okay? Now, the second thing, if we're to build more bridges, if we're to get over the other side where our goals and the future that we want, we need to learn to reframe failure as feedback. Now, Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx, credits her success on how she was taught to view failure. So growing up, her father would ask her every evening, what did you fail at today? Now, if she didn't have an answer, he'd be super disappointed, not because she hadn't succeeded, but meant that she hadn't actually tried something challenging enough. She hadn't pushed herself. Now, Blakely goes on to credit this mindset, this idea of seeing failure as feedback as well, as being pivotal to the growth of her now billion-dollar empire as well. Again, there are many journeys through this too. When she failed her LSAT exam, she wanted to be a lawyer in the early days and things didn't pan out. She didn't let it stop her. Instead, she just took a different path. She started off selling faxes door to door. She used that to gain the resilience that eventually kind of helped her in Spanx as well. So Spanx today is $1 billion company. And again, the reason it is that is because Blakely embraced failure. This is what helped her to achieve her dreams. And so what is embracing failure or redefining failure? What does it actually look like for us as chiropractors? First of all, it looks like us looking at failure as an opportunity, okay? So just like Sarah used her rejection as a chance to redefine her pitch, see each setback as an opportunity for improvement, okay? So if you run a workshop, for instance, and it doesn't fill up, have a look at what happened. Was it your topic? Was it your timing? Or was the audience not targeted? What can we actually learn from this? The second thing we need to do here is that we need, particularly in the early days, we need to separate effort from outcome, okay? So a failed attempt doesn't erase the value that you put in. Just because you made a video and no one watched it doesn't mean that it wasn't really, really valuable. You learned some skills along the way. Maybe that was just in editing and posting it, okay? But this whole concept, when I hear people talk about this separating effort from outcome, we can't do this forever. We need to break this down into two components, the early days and the latter days, because there is an outcome that we want. If it's with our social media, the outcome that we want is to get bums on seats. Okay, so I want to talk to you about this concept of separating effort from outcome And I want to break it into two concepts, the early days as well. So when you start out with a new skill, a project, a business venture, focusing on the effort rather than the outcome helps you build confidence, okay? So it helps you encourage experimentation. We're not so focused on what it's going to work out, but we're just playing with things. It helps us develop the skills and the systems, all right? So we might be posting on social media. We might be doing that on a kind of daily basis as well. But maybe in the early days, what's happening is we're not getting a lot of engagement. We're not actually getting a lot of views there as well. And this is totally okay. In the early stages, we're working on getting comfortable on camera. We're working on the other skills that go along with it. But there is a shift, okay? Later on at some stage, we need to start to move towards looking at the outcome as well. So once you've got some skills, once you've built some momentum and some confidence in your ability to take action, it's important to start measuring the outcomes, okay? Now, we need to do this because if we put in all this effort without results, we're likely to end up burnt out, okay? Outcomes are indicators of growth. Patient conversions, content engagement, revenue, okay? These are all things that this is the reason that we're doing it as well. And again, refinement comes from the data there as well, okay? So we can think about this a bit like kind of learning to ride a bike. So at first, when we're learning to ride a bike, the goal is simply staying upright, okay? This is the effort as well. But once you've mastered the balance as well, the focus shifts to where do we want to go? Now, when we progress through these stages, we ensure that we're building both confidence and we're achieving the results. So early phases, where most of you might be while you're listening to this as well, is that we want to focus on effort. Now, if we're to reframe our failures, we need to start to ask better questions. Instead of asking, why did this happen to me? We could ask a question like, what can I learn from this? So maybe an email campaign underperforms. Was it the call to action? Was it the subject line? What can we actually learn from this? We need to get really good at celebrating the attempt. I see this in so many chiropractors that I work with as they beat themselves up. They do something amazing. And even if the attempt was successful, they don't stop and applaud themselves for actually trying. Okay? They might say, look, I didn't do it perfectly. But you need to prove that you've stepped outside of or you have proven to yourself that you've stepped outside your comfort zone. And that requires, or certainly means, that you should be celebrating that, okay? So have some time to sort of step aside, pat yourself on the back there. Reframing failure is about seeing the bigger picture. Each attempt will move you closer to mastery, okay? And that moves on to number 3, and that is we need to build habits of completion. Now, most of you are aware of Jerry Seinfeld. Now, he attributes so much of his success to a simple habit he calls don't break the chain. So early on in his career, he committed to writing jokes every single day. And to stay consistent with this, he used a calendar. And on that calendar, he marked it with a big red X if he wrote jokes that day. Now, over time, this goal became about him not breaking the chain of the X's as well. So small and consistent habits like this one is what helped Jerry sharpen his craft and build the massive body of work that he has now. So Seinfeld's story shows us that greatness doesn't come from occasional bursts of effort, but it comes from showing up and completing tasks regularly, no matter how small they are. So what does building habits of completion look like for us? Well, it starts with us starting small and consistent, all right? So begin with micro habits that are easy to repeat and help to build momentum towards completion. So if you're working on upskilling and maybe having a better understanding of the science that supports what we do as chiropractors, rather than having the goal of having to read an entire paper every day or every week, just start with committing to read 5 minutes. 5 minutes every day or 5 minutes a couple of times a week, okay? When we do this, and we do this consistently as well, it'll help us get into the focus of completion. Now, just like Seinfeld did, use visual accountability, okay? So these calendars where he put the X's on it. Now, I've used several apps over time, but sometimes it's just a good old calendar that you put an X on. That visual accountability of not wanting to sort of break the streak is really powerful, okay? So mark off each day that you complete a specific task, whether it's a social media post or whether it might be interacting with patients in a certain way. I set a challenge for a chiropractor who was finding that he was often losing focus with his practice members. Sometimes he would turn up and be super focused with them, and sometimes he'd have his mind just wandering. And so simply what he did is a pen and a paper, and he put a line down the middle, and on one side he had a yes, and the other side he had a no. And after every patient, he asked himself the question, was I present with this patient? And if it was a yes, he put a tick there. And if it was a no, he put a cross there. And his goal was to have a whole bunch more ticks. Now, just by doing this, it massively turned around his focus. He felt more present with his patients, his retention improved, and his practice grew. This one source of visual accountability and asking himself that question. The next important point in here is to make sure that we're closing the loop. Always finish the task you started before moving on to the next one. Avoid leaving loose ends. So if you're filming a video, edit and publish it in the same week rather than leaving it half done on your computer. Get things done, okay? Or at least get to the portion done. So again, even if we're breaking that up, it's like, okay, I'm going to film all of the video. Don't do a bit of it now and a bit of it later. When you sit down to edit it, do all of the editing. We need to make sure that we're closing the loop as well, okay? Tie completion to rewards. Use small incentives. Remember, as humans, we're motivated to move away from pain, but also to move towards pleasure. Reinforce it. Okay, after finalizing a report or reading something or publishing a video, maybe take yourself down for a coffee. Give yourself a 30-minute break. I do this all the time with just simple things in a round, walk around the block, out in the sun. After I finish this, I'm going to have some food. I'm getting hungry. And I was going to eat before recording this podcast episode. But I went, no, I'm going to finish this first. Next thing to think about under this same umbrella here is create non-negotiable time blocks. So schedule dedicated time each week for these important tasks. So it might be an hour or two, a couple of mornings a week there for you to work on major projects without distractions as well. Building habits of completion creates a snowball effect. Each finished task builds confidence, okay? It reduces overwhelm, it frees mental energy, and it allows us to focus on the next step, okay? So when we establish these habits, you train yourself to value progress over procrastination. Now, this leads us on to our fourth and final point here, if we want to move more through to completion, and that is we have to learn how to foster accountability. Now, Elon Musk is famous for setting seemingly impossible goals and then holding himself accountable in very public ways. So, for example, he announced Tesla's first Roadster. He gave a specific timeline for delivery, even though the technology wasn't even developed, the infrastructure wasn't ready. That public declaration created a level of pressure, not just for him, but for his team. It was pressure for him to deliver. Now, whilst Tesla has sometimes missed the deadlines, and just because we pop these out there, occasionally we'll miss them, this strategy, particularly in Musk's case there too, has been a powerful motivator. Okay, it holds him accountable to his vision. It inspires his team. It creates trust. Sometimes a little bit of skepticism too amongst investors and consumers alike as well. Okay, so Musk's story shows that fostering accountability provides and helps to foster progress as well, even under really challenging circumstances. So what might this look like for you inside of your practice as well? The first one I want to do is I encourage you to share your goals. Tell somebody who you trust, who will also hold you accountable, what your plans are. Okay, now we need to pick this person carefully because sometimes we can share this maybe with our mum or dad or even our partner, and they can be lovingly gentle on us and they can let us off. And we know that that sort of accountability doesn't work. But at the same time, we also don't want to share it necessarily with our worst enemy as well. We need a level of safety in there. And if we are sharing it with somebody when that might let us off, we need to let them know, I do not want to be let off for this under no circumstances, no stories as well. And so again, we can create accountability partners. So partner with somebody who will check on your progress regularly, weekly, daily. Again, I've done different things with friends of mine where, the end of each day, we just share, what did we move? What did we progress? What are our goals for the week? And knowing that I need to do this at each and end of every day was powerful for me. I've got a coaching group where I hold myself accountable too. And I have several members inside a community influencer that ask this of me. You can use tools or systems. Again, I've had apps to help to track my progress as well. So it might be Trello or Asana as well. And it could be just a simple calendar, okay, that you're crossing off. I love to set a to-do list as well, all the projects out. And there's something very rewarding about just crossing that off and seeing it go, okay? Make sure that you have clear consequences and rewards there as well. So tie your accountability to a specific consequence. If you don't follow through on this, what's going to happen? So recently I've got a client of mine who loves to surf. And if he didn't get the project done, he wasn't allowed to surf for the next month. And if he did get the project done, there was a really great reward where he and his wife were going to go to this beautiful kind of day spa. They're going to do some really fabulous things there as well. So make yourself a bet, okay? If I don't meet my goal, maybe I'll donate to a cause that I don't like. And if I do, I'm going to treat myself to something. Again, this doesn't have to be financially motivated. Maybe you don't have spare cash to be providing, great rewards, but there are plenty of rewards that we can give ourselves that don't have money tied to them as well, okay? Accountability isn't just about meeting deadlines. It's about creating the structures that ensure that there's consistent progress. Now, whether it's through public commitments, peer support, or even self-imposed rewards, okay, or penalties as well, this helps to keep us focused and motivated. So, we've talked about 4 powerful strategies that are going to help you move beyond perfectionism, build momentum into your work, and build the bridge to completion as well. That gets us over to the other side. Remember, we said that nothing happens if we don't get through to completion. So let's quickly recap those points, and then let's talk about how you can start putting them into action. The first was embrace imperfection. Remember, Reid Hoffman taught us that if you're not embarrassed by the first version of your product, then you've launched too late. The goal is B- work, not A+. We're focusing on completing tasks, knowing that you'll improve over time, okay? And remember that most people will not notice the small flaws that you obsess over. The second thing we need to do is we need to reframe failure as feedback, okay? Sarah Blakely's father asked her every night, "What did you fail at today?" This taught her to see failure as part of the learning process. When you reframe failure as feedback, you gain valuable insights. It helps us move closer to our success, okay? Number 3 is build habits of completion. Remember Jerry Seinfeld's don't break the chain habit, okay? It reminds us that greatness is built through really small but consistent actions. By creating habits that focus on finishing tasks, no matter how small, you build momentum and confidence. You build your bridge closer to completion. And finally, it was all about fostering accountability. Elon Musk told us himself that accountability, okay, making bold and public commitments, okay, is what helps him deliver. Now, whether it's sharing your goals, finding an accountability partner, or setting clear rewards and consequences, accountability helps to keep you on track. But here's the thing. None, and I'll say it again, none of these strategies will work unless you take action. And the beauty of these ideas is they don't require perfection. They just require you to start. So here's my challenge for you. Pick one task that you've been procrastinating on or overthinking, just one. And instead of aiming for perfection, just aim to complete it. Now, maybe it's a draft of a blog post, it's a follow-up email, it's a video, whatever it is, do it today. And don't just stop there. Share it with somebody, maybe an accountability partner, a friend, or even your wider audience as well. Let them know what you're committing to, okay? Let them know that you're all about progress, not about perfection. Now, the key is to take that first imperfect step, then the next one, and then over time, those steps will turn into habits, and those habits will lead to results. Remember, done is better than perfect, and action always beats inaction every single time. So, what's the one thing that you're going to start action on today? Write it down, commit to it, and start building momentum. And if you need some help or someone to help keep you accountable, don't hesitate to reach out. You can find me on the socials. You can send me an email as well. Let's make progress together, because your work, even your imperfect work, has the power to make an impact on your community. Now, as always, thanks for all that you do. Keep saving lives. Your community needs you building bridges to completion, not stopping halfway. Until next time, see you next week. Bye. If you've enjoyed listening to this podcast, you have to come and check out my Community Influencer Program. It's my monthly coaching program where we take all this material and I'll work with you to help you apply it, implement it, and systemize it. The Community Influencer Group Coaching Program is designed to help you increase your practice income, impact, and enjoyment. Join me over at anguspyke.com/join. That's anguspyke.com/join. I'd love to see you there.